Okay, so we are doing the Reb Tzaddik on Purim from the Tzaddik, and we'll do, I think, Dalad and Hay if we have time. Inyan Mashkosu, Misma Gula Gula Adif. The question whether in the Gemara Megillah is whether you do Purim in either Aleph or either base. And really, we should do Purim in either Aleph because the Ikra Ador is either Aleph. So we do Purim in either base because we want to juxtapose, connect the Gula Purim to Gula Mitzrayim. And Gulas Mitzrayim and Gulas Purim. With the Gulas Mitzrayim, why? I mean, it's obviously something just deeper than just randomly connecting two Gulas to each other. Gulas Mitzrayim and Rosh Kol Nisim. Gula from Mitzrayim was the beginning of all the Nisim. By a rachis, he's got for Amisol, of course. By a rachis, he's Galus Kedusha Yisrael, and it was the initial revelation of the Kedusha of Amisol in the world. By Neis Golei Cholam, at the time, the entire world witnessed a miracle. So Hashem is Baruch Bacha Banu La'am. Hashem shows us over the course of, it was over the course of quite a few months from the time of the beginning of the 10 Makos until culminating in Matan Torah. It was obvious that Hashem chose us for nation Basanistim Niglim and did reveal miracles, Shem Chutza Derech HaTeva, which beyond normal nature. Moshe Ne'emar could say, Shomu Amun Yir Gazum. Even before Matan Torah. As Yosha, we say the nations heard and they were afraid. Because sof call is a typo. It's supposed to say safe kol anisim. That's what's called the end of all miracles, right? The Gemara then asks, what about Hanukkah? Gemara says Hanukkah was not the nisim which are written in Teresh B'Ksav. Hanukkah is only in Teresh B'Alpeh, not in Teresh B'Ksav. So S is called sof kol anisim. Everything was in great concealment. In other words, sof doesn't just mean the last one. It means at the very bottom of the continuum. The T.S. is the top continuum, it was Goli. And this is the bottom continuum, it was very much Behest. It was cloaked in almost normal, natural processes. There was a reason why Achashverosh took Esther. It should be Benasa, not Benishar. Benasa came Beinov, and she found favor in his eyes. They said Polach as Esther. Therefore, she. I think it's also a type of some sort. Say Polach Nia as Esther. Hold on a second. Let's get a better text of this. 1 second. I can put up this here. I think this is probably going to be better. Tzaddik. Okay. No, he also has the same typo. Some of them. Here it says so-called Amim, right? But it says here it says Venos instead of Nishar. That's going to be like they Polachnias Haman, not Esther. Okay, so that's obviously somewhat better. She was able to subjugate Haman, not say Yehudim, and uplift the Jews. Zeshamu Esther min Torah minayin. And that's what Gemara Chulin says. We already know Esther in the Torah. The Torah Gemara there says, we already know Moshe min Torah minayin. We know Moshe min Torah because it says by the Dor Mabul, b'shagam hu basa. B'shagam and gematria is Moshe. Okay, so therefore, obviously, it's a question why you need to have a remez in the Torah for Moshe Rabbeinu if he's explicit. Okay, but that's the whole issue. Why Moshe is connected to Dor Mabul? There's a fundamental connection there, which is not for now. And then it goes to Mordechai, Esther, and Haman. It says Mordechai min Torah minayin. It says in Parshas Pikuda, I think it is. No, Parshas Ketisa next week. It says more drawer, right? The more drawer is part of the Shemin HaMishcha. And this more drawer, Metargamina, it says the Targum is Mira Dachya. So Mira Dachya is remes to Mordechai. Esther min Torah minayin, where it says, because it says in the Tochacha, Onochi Aster Astir Panai B'Yomahu. They're going to conceal my countenance, says the Kosh Baruch Hu. Haman min Torah minayin, and the Haman's min Torah. So it says, because it says by Adam Rishon that Hashem says to him, Hamin Oetz. And Amin Oetz, the Amin is Haman. So there is a lot said about all these allusions, and there's a lot to be said. But right now, as he's saying it now, Kisas Frankel, Shapasuk Zeh, Sheikar Rita Shela Adam Mukasher Nelami Menu Zoshu Behester Ponim. The fascinating idea is that the Tochacha is obviously negative phenomena, and the primary negative phenomena of Hester Ponim is that a person doesn't realize he's in Hester Ponim. In other words, it's bad enough that you can't perceive Hashem, but if you don't realize that you're not perceiving Hashem, that's even worse. That's what it says. The klola is a double klola, right? It says when it's concealed from him, that there's a hester upon him. In other words, if you know there's a hester, so you can dive into the world and say, you know what, take me out of the hester. But you don't even realize you're in hester. You're so unaware of that, so you don't realize you're hester. Then that's even worse, because what are you going to do? You don't know enough to extricate yourself from the situation.
Is that where there's a double lashon?
What? Yeah, that's what it says. Double lashon. Manochi Esther Astir. Sheyastir Hester Ponim. That's the point itself we can see. The Zeya Ikones Purim, and that's the primary miracle Purim. She'oz b'shefel amadrega. They're on the lowest level. They were living in utter Hester. They didn't even realize how low they had sunk. Right? In other words, there was such assimilation, which is epitomized at the beginning of the Megillah by the Mishnah, where they went to the Mishnah and they were drinking at the same time. Chashverosh was drinking from the Kelim of Beis Hamikdash, and they were not. They as long as they were drinking kosher wine, they didn't care, right? They were oblivious to the fact that there's something very, very wrong going on here, and that this is a very, very terrible curse which you should not be taking part of. That Achashverosh is making a simcha that the Beis Hamikdash has not been rebuilt. It says, Kasher Gishu, sorry, Kasher Gishu saw Omni Metachlis Hesed, when they realized how concealed things were, then it said, Eva Gadol Yodim, the Tzom B'chiyum Mispeit. Then they made a velus, fasting, crying, and eulogizing. Kayadua the inyan avelus vespeit yore al dava shenechlat bedas adam shvar of the tikvaso. So it says, why would they make an avelus in hespeit? We understand they want to do tshuva, right? So you have tzoyim and tanis and bechi, that makes sense. But why of a hespeit? We say, you know why you make an of? The only time you make an of a hespeit is when you lost all hope. There is no you're convinced that nothing can change and that you can't get yourself out of this. It's a terrible story about the Holocaust, that when people got to Auschwitz, they said Kaddish, and they said Kaddish for themselves, right? Because they realized nobody's going to say Kaddish for them. So that's like, but they realized there was no hope. They're not getting out of this alive, and therefore they misabel on themselves, so to speak. So this idea of making an Abel and a Hesped is realizing that something is so far gone that there's no apparent hope of salvation. Ukina other lesser ames, like the Avelus and the Hesped on Amesh, ain't open like zero. There's no way to bring him back. Shirigishu Hester upon him, but because they understood this Hester upon him, and they realized how profoundly hopeless the situation is, Nepach lehem Evel Yom. It changed from Avelus to a Yom. Zesh Amru, and that's why Chazal say, Amos say ro klav seretz, it's Yeshua Salokenu. When did all ends of the earth see the salvation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu? We made Mordechai Esther. So normally we understand it to mean that even the nations of the world, the very ends of the world, understood that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the operative here. No, it says ro klav seretz umos ha'olam. It's not going about the nations of the world. They didn't see it. Since it was very close to being nature, who says the Muslim had any sense that it was miraculous at all? It says in the Megillah that many of the nations of the people of the nations of the Persian Empire were converting. It says it was out of fear. It wasn't out of revelation. It wasn't out of realization. It was out of fear. They're afraid of Mordechai. They saw the king uplifted him. So who's the ones who saw? Rak Chuvan Roklav Seoretz, all the ends of the earth means Al Yisrael. Ephes in modern Hebrew means zero. But in classic Hebrew it means those who are that which is as if it's not non-existence, right? Something which is at the extreme end of something. So even those who are extremely low in Am Yisrael, that they are the lowest madrega in concealment, out of sorts, to the very ends of the earth. And specifically because they were at that level, in other words, and they saw how things were overturned completely, even though it was a B'derech HaTeva. They saw the salvation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu out of the Hester. In other words, they saw how even in the Hester, that there's this popular wrestler song. I guess the words are from Nachman, right? So Afilu Bastora Shabatoch Hastora. What's it called? Shamani Omed or something like that. So even the Hastora, what is Hastora Shabatoch Hastora? Hastora Shabatoch Hastora is this Hester where a person doesn't realize that there's a Hester, right? It's just so beyond. But there also, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is there, and making miracles behind the scenes. And when Am Yisrael realizes that, so then there's a tremendous simcha that there's a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which obviously transcends everything which seems like all is lost, and still manages to bring Am Yisrael up in Madrega and give them even a new Yom Tov. It was there was so much more appreciation because there's a Tocha Hester. The more the Choshech, the more appreciated is the Or. And he says this Inyan sparks every year during the days of Purim. The Rashba says in the Megillah, so the question is, what does that mean? The Rashba says, and Shuvas the Rashba, it says that even in Dorosh Shmad, even a generation of tremendous oppression, like a generation like of the Inquisition or the Holocaust, or all those generations where things are going horrifically, Purim is never forgotten. There's always a Purim, because Purim is the Yontif. Mitocha Hester, to find still Simcha. I was just reading yesterday about the Piasetzner, how in the Warsaw Ghetto he told everybody, Purim, how you supposed to see Simcha? Said no, that is the Avodah Purim. Dafka went in the Hester to be B'Simcha, nevertheless, which is sometimes very difficult. But there's a special or on Purim. It says that in Purim, and it's not just for the collective of the nation, but for every individual Jew. Anybody who knows how imperfect he is, all the things which afflict his heart, all the things which he does wrong, all the things which he messes up, all the things he hasn't accomplished. And a person thinks he's at the lowest and he's a failure and things are not going well, and what hope is there? He's embittered about this. There's an or which comes on Purim. The people are zoicha to it. The people who look for it are zoicha to it. Then that's why Chazal say, the Sforim say that kol poshet yadon noskin ro, which the Parsha means that anybody who asks for tzedakah, you give them tzedakah on Purim. You don't check to see their credentials. But it does mean, the Sforim say means that anybody who extends his hands for siyata d'shmaya and for a connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu is able to accomplish it on Purim. So there's a special quality in Purim that even a person who's broken and downtrodden spiritually and feels a lack of significance and lack of accomplishment and a deficit in the ruchnius, on Purim, at whether it's the time of the Megillah or the time of the Suda, or whatever the case may be, there is the moments when a person can feel you know what? It's true. I have all this Hester in my life, but deep down on the Hester, just like Am Yisrael had that connection with Kodesh Baruch Hu at the time of the Nes of Purim, I have this connection with Kodesh Baruch Hu too, and therefore, even though I think that things are so negative and so overwhelming, nonetheless, I can accomplish a simcha in my realization that again, even though there's a tremendous Hester upon him, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is with me. Obviously, it's an avodah. It's something which doesn't come automatically on Purim. There is this characteristic on Purim that a person is able to accomplish this type of simcha even in B'tocha Hester. It was like it once was thousands of years ago, but a person has to work in it and consciously contemplate it, and then there's an illumination. So that is the geula of Purim, contradistinction to geula Pesach. In other words, don't think that the geula of Pesach was so much greater because it was benigla, and geula Purim is so much lesser because it was benisna. No, on the contrary, the geula Purim is so much more relevant to us because we are in Hester, we're in Golus, and therefore we look for the light which you can experience even in Golus. And that's why we say that Purim was the one yontif which we celebrate, which is outside, which happened in Golus, because this is the yontif which, even though, and the Gemara says, even though Akati Avdi Achashverosh Shonan remain this Abanim Achashverosh, still, even the Hester, a person on Purim can feel and sense that connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So I occasionally on Purim I experience that, not every Purim, but sometimes when you're in the right frame of mind, you can experience, there's a connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu when a person is really has that simcha and that perception of the connection of Purim. Let's do another one.
Why does that mean you have to connect Pesach and Purim, though?
It means that don't think that they're different. You can think, okay, when there's a Nes Nikla, then I can say Zekeli Baveyu. But as the Nes Nister, I can't say Zekeli Baveyu. No, so therefore, it's Yeshua Salokenu. Don't think it was the days of Pesach. No, it's the days of Purim they could see Yeshua Salokenu. That's what Am Yisrael saw that, and that's how they made the Yontif of Purim, and that's why it's a Purim is this tremendous Yontif. And when Chazal say, "Asinu kol monoslis b'libatel chutzim mimei Purim," because this idea of finding HaKadosh Baruch Hu in Hester is really the idea of Olam Hazeh. So that's what Olam Hazeh is supposed to bring about and accomplish within us. This idea of understanding that everything, wherever you are, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is really there. And it says, "HaKadosh Baruch Hu is there behind the wall, but He's always there and paying attention." Okay, so that's the chiddush of that. This gula is also a gula like Pesach, and also that stature. Next one. Okay. Osei. Klipa Samolik v'Haman hu chutzpah. So a klipa is in Kabbalah means the power of evil of that entity. Its unique quality, the characteristic of evil. So the klipa of Haman and Amalek and Haman is chutzpah. The Yitua klapi mala, shmaya, and waging war against HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Mo klipas Bilam, and it's linked. Chazal linked together, or the Misparim together. Bilam and Amalek. Bilam also was the klipa of chutzpah, and that's why he said, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I want to go with these people. And Hashem said, okay, fine. You want to go. So Hashem said, don't go with them, don't curse the nation. And he went anyway. But love Amru, and concerning him, they said, Chutzpah afilu klapi shmaya mahani. Chutzpah is so effective that it works even vis-a-vis HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In other words, there is this notion of chutzpah, which is so powerful when it's used with its full force, that even it can even kaviyachol undermine Ratzon Hashem. So Amalek and Haman, they knew Yikros Yisrael, how precious Am Yisrael is to the Kodesh Baruch Hu. Nevertheless, they stood with chutzpah klapi shmaya towards the Kodesh Baruch Hu. Lekatcha Yisrael l'mala. To prosecute against Am Yisrael on high. So even though Am Yisrael and Hashem has a special relationship, because Baruch Hu made this power of chutzpah, which it is important for us to use ourselves, as it's going to explain. Chutzpah is not just a negative thing, but the flip side of the positive side of chutzpah is the negative side of chutzpah, which is that chutzpah is a powerful force, and Hashem gave chutzpah tremendous koyach, and even to go against the Kodesh Baruch Hu. So obviously, a good, the example of chutzpah l'shem shamayim is Chayim Agam, right? Chayim Agam uses chutzpah as Hashem wants him to use it, right? When Moshe Rabbeinu next parsha says, right? Just if you don't go to save army, so just erasing from your book. So these are chutzpah in a positive sense. But since chutzpah in a positive sense is such as a powerful koyach, so there's chutzpah in a negative sense. That explains now that the chutzpah's power comes from the parallel. Hashem created in kedusha, in a holy way, the concept of arguing, so to speak, with HaKadosh Baruch Hu for the good of Am Yisrael, not just the good of Am Yisrael. We see already the paradigm that is Avraham Avinu by stone, right? He's saying to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you know what? Yesh Chamishim Tzaddikim, Arboim Tzaddikim, right? So therefore, there is this concept of Tovei Sokomosh Amu Zamu Lemishin Notchim Oso B'Sameach. It should be HaKadosh Baruch Hu Notchim Oso B'Sameach V'Chulei. So it's a fascinating idea. In other words, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants Am Yisrael to have such a leadership role together with him in the Bria, so that he created even this concept of arguing with HaKadosh Baruch Hu and winning the argument. That Am Yisrael should be able to have this, like a Tzaddik goes to HaKadosh Baruch Hu Mekayim, but even a higher madrega. That Am Yisrael, when they are L'Shem Shamayim in the chutzpah, in other words, they say to Hashem, we know what your real ratzon is. That isn't that your real ratzon. We know better. So then that is an effective tool. And, it works also with human beings. It's a necessary koyach which people have, which is, now, if I want to psychologically have an impact upon you, so very often the way I can do it is with a good chutzpah. As I can tell you, you know what, you think that is what you want, you don't really want this, you want something else, right? And that's sometimes very effective. So this is something where, since there is, in everything in the world, there are layers, superficial layers and inner layers, so therefore chutzpah is the tool to penetrate to an inner layer. But sometimes it's a positive tool, and sometimes it's a negative tool. Was Hashem doing? He's smiling, he's saying, my children have vanquished me. This is about Tanur Shalachnoi. Rabbi Ben Horkinus said this Tanur is tar, and Rabbanan said it's tameh, and Rabbi Ben Horkinus brought all sorts of proofs that this Tanur is tar, and Rabbanan, and he said that the carob tree should prove it. The carob tree, I think it shriveled up. I don't remember exactly what happened. Maybe it grew. I don't remember what happened. And then the river should prove it, that the reverse course, and that the walls of base meadow should prove it, that they started falling down. And finally said, Kosh Baruch should prove that I'm right. And Basco came out and said that Allah started to be lesser. And Rabbi Yeshua stood up and said, you said, Lo b'shamayim. And it's not up to you. It's up to us. And you gave us a tool of Achar Rabbi Matos. And we, the majority, are against Rabbi Ben Horkinus. So therefore, we're not going to pass like him, even though you say so. And then one of the Tanoim later made Elio and said, Elio, what was HaKadosh Baruch Hu? What HaKadosh Baruch Hu responded to that? He smiled. And he said, my sons have vanquished me. But there's a play on words here, because Nitzchuni also means, Netzach means eternity, not just victory. And there's this idea of, in order for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to be victorious in this world, it has to be something which gives HaKadosh Baruch Hu eternity in this world. And what makes HaKadosh Baruch Hu eternal in this world is Am Yisrael. And Am Yisrael manifests what they perceive to be the Ratzon Hashem, even opposite of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so to speak. That is the nitzchius of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In other words, at the moment, perhaps it seems that Hashem doesn't want this. But we know what Hashem wants long term. And Hashem says, you should contemplate that and take that into account. And doing that indicates the nitzchius of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We know that the Ratzon Hashem is that in these situations, we should to vanquish Hashem for the good of Am Yisrael. Gisa Levi, and it says about Levi. This is the same Gemara about after Choni Amago. So after the Gemara of Choni Amago, it says that he was chutzpahdik towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It wasn't raining. Same idea as like Choni. They say you went up and sat in your high place and you're not relating to us. It's not right. So he was chutzpahdik klapi Shmai. Now it says it says that Levi was punished for this, that he became lame. He became handicapped as a result of his having been chutzpahdik towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But nonetheless, he hoil l'klal Yisrael v'asa mitra. He was effective, and it started raining. There's another principle of Tzaddik, which he says in many places, that if a person doesn't have Eir Lishma, like being chutzpahdik to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is not Eir Lishma, so you have to. It's the right thing to do, but you have to be willing to suffer the consequences of having done something which is partially wrong. So Eir Lishma, it's not black and white. It's not either black or white. It's both black and white. So therefore, even though what you're doing is right, still, if you for what you did, the part of it which is wrong, so for that you have to be punished. Similar to like with Esther when she says "Kasher avadati avadati," even though Esther says has to go into Achashverosh, that's required. She has to say about Israel, but at the same time, according to the Medrash and Chazal, that she was married to Mordechai, so then she's going to lose being able to stay with Mordechai because she's being Mizana Baratza, because she's going willfully to be with Achashverosh. So there's a price, even Avei Lishma, which has to be done to save Am Yisrael. There's a price, and you have to. The chiddush is that you have to be willing to pay the price if it's for a far greater cause. So that's he's saying. Even though Levi became lame as a result, he was punished for whatever negative there was in the chutzpah. Nevertheless, the chutzpah is a good thing and it's essential, and Am Yisrael needs to have this koyach, and therefore the koyach exists. And on account of the necessity of there being this concept of chutzpah which exists for good, there has to be a concept of chutzpah which exists for bad. Every midah which exists in the world has to be positive, capable of being both positive and negative. That's midos themselves are abstract concepts, and then they have a continuum of how they're used, and they can use positively and negatively. Every midah, and so chutzpah is no different. Even though chutzpah is like the most powerful midah that exists, it also has positive and negative. If it has a positive use, it has to have a negative use as well. Otherwise, there's no bechira. Otherwise, there's no actual balance in which you can actually get rewarded for using things the right way. If you're not going to get punished using them the wrong way. So it says about Amalek in Parshas Balak. Rashis Goyim Amalek. They're first to wage war against HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that was part of their chutzpah, right? That Amalek jumped into the hot bathtub, even though everybody else was afraid. Amalek probably was also afraid, but nevertheless, they had the chutzpah to jump in and attack Am Yisrael. So too, they're going to be the last in order to be eliminated. And Tzaddik also explains this. He says that the chutzpah. It says that in the end of the site that says chutzpah be'ikvus Mashiach chutzpah yaska. In ikvus Mashiach, when right before Mashiach comes, there's going to be a lot of chutzpah in the world. And that's the Gemara at the end of the site. And the Gemara says that as a part of the curses and part of the negative phenomena which exist right before Mashiach comes. It says here, Abunar Bezakein, a child will be chosik to an adult, a youngster to an older person, and a daughter-in-law will rise up against her mother-in-law, etc., etc. And so normally it's understood, and we like the Pashim shot, that it's a negative and it's a curse. So Tzaddik says no such thing as something which is just a negative and a curse. He says chutzpah is an essential component of Ikvus Mashiach also for a good. For two reasons. One is because it's the chutzpah which Am Yisrael possesses, which allows them to exist in the face of overwhelming tuma, overwhelming opposition, overwhelming nisyonis. And Ukbas Shikha is going to be the time of the greatest nisyonos. And you need to have a stiff backbone of chutzpah in order to confront and fight with that tremendous those tremendous nisyonos. That's one of the understandings one can give about the Gemara. Says that Yisrael are azim shebeumos, and that's what the Torah was given to them. The Pasha shot in the Gemara is that Am Yisrael is the azim. They're very very contradict, and therefore they turn in order to diminish their chut, in order to calm it down. But the way, according to Reb Tzaddik, the Pshat is no. We have this chutzpah, which is essential for us to be able to maintain ourselves throughout the galus and throughout all difficult situations, and therefore we're the ideal people to give the Torah because we can have that chutzpah which works l'shem shamayim. And as he says again, is that chutzpah at the end of days is essential in order to confront all the tremendous nisyonos which we're going to have. And besides that, he says that at the end of times, when Mashiach is supposed to come, Am Yisrael has to demand Mashiach. They have to have the chutzpah to demand the Geula. Says that he brings down the end in Parsha Shlach. It talks about the Meraglim. And so after the Meraglim, so you have the Mapilim. People tried to go up to Eretz Yisrael despite the fact that Hashem said not to go. And the Chazal say that the Torah says Moshe Rabbeinu said to them, "Hilo titzlach, don't go up because Hashem's not with you, and this won't be successful." The Tzaddik Medayik, I think it's his own deal. It says "V'hilo titzlach," this won't be successful. So it sounds like there's another time when it will be successful. It says when it will be successful at the end of time. Now it's not yet time for Am Yisrael to have the Gula, and therefore it's not going to be successful now. But there's going to be a time when chutzpah is essential, and it's going to lead to the success of the ultimate Gula. And then, at the time of Ikvus Mashiach, then chutzpah is going to be essential to bring about the Gula. In other words, we're only really going to get the Gula when Am Yisrael feels we need it, we demand it, and we come to Kodesh Baruch Hu, even with a bit of chutzpah, and say you have to redeem us. So then the chutzpah is achrisah. The midah of chutzpah is the last midah, which is so to speak essential in creation, and therefore Amalek is the last. We still need to, just like when they lost Nevuah, when they eradicated the Yetzer Avodah Zarah at the end, at the beginning of the period of Bayis Sheni. So then they lost the koyach of Nevuah because Zelu Mazeh. And there's a tremendous Yetzer Hara for Ruchnius. Also, the Yetzer Tov for Ruchnius is if it eliminate one, the other one gets eliminated as well, because it takes away that koyach from the Bria, and it has to take away the koyach because otherwise, again, Bechira will be skewed. So therefore, whenever you take away a koyach for Ra, you have to also there's a koyach for Tov, which is also lost as a result. Entrepreneurs figured it's worth the trade-off. Fine. So they lost the same time Avodah Zarah was lost, the koyach in Tuma. Nevuah is less koyach in Kedusha. But the last midah, which can be fixed in that way, is chutzpah, because it's the one we need till the very end. And therefore, the last midah to be fixed, so to speak, is the midah of chutzpah, in order that we should be able still be to be mechutzafim in Ikvus Mashiach when it's absolutely necessary. So that's why that Amalek is the last nation to be destroyed, along with its midah, and the midah of chutzpah itself is last to be fixed, so to speak, at the time when it's no longer needed, but that's only when the Gula comes. And that's when finally the enemy is eradicated, then we no longer need to have the chutzpah in order to fight him. Then Hashem Elohim Yeshev Konen Mishpaki. So then HaKadosh Baruch Hu's throne will be complete, because we say at the end of Parashas B'Shalach, Kiara Case called Milchamal Hashem Amalek Midor Dor. And Akise Sholem Ein Sholem. Sholem says case instead of Kise. Says Yud K instead of Yud K Vav K. They're not complete until Achimachas Arshal Amalek. So then, when Amalek is finally eradicated by our chutzpah, standing against the powers which Amalek represents, so then the throne of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is complete, and then of course there is the Gula comes at that time. So the elsewhere the Chazal say chutzpah is a malchus of litaga. Chutzpah is a king without a crown. So, and that's why the heads of Esav are called alufim. They're not called kings, right? And aluf also is a malchus of litaga, right? So malchus of litaga means a king without a crown. a power, tremendous power, but without having the formal crown on it. So in Kabbalah, the Keser, the Taga, is the connection of a person with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that which goes above the head and connects to Shemayim, like a Keser is above the head. So chutzpah, when it's used by Esav, it's a Malchus Taga. It's tremendous power, but it doesn't stretch high towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It stops at, so to speak, the end of the body, at the end of the head. I'm supposed to use the chutzpah to take it a step further, to get close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and connect to that Keser Malchus. In other words, yes, you need to go from being a general to being a king. And that way you use to get the Keser, which comes at the end of having that tremendous power of using Hashem Shemayim, then you get connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay, I think we'll stop here for today because we have 2 minutes left. Should be started to have a wonderful, uplifting, and meaningful Purim.
Man.
Take care.
And very interesting that Tzaddik quotes the Gemara about Levi from Tainus. So that it comes up in Megillah in Agadata.
That's interesting. Yeah, right. Good point. I wonder why. Yeah, that's interesting. Because Chaim Agos there too. Make us excellent point. Okay, shkoyach. Okay, take care. Hatzlacha.